saved
going live.
anything.
Ready? All right,
Do you have an agenda?
there
No.
it is. Do we have one
We're
there?
just doing whatever we want. You're not gonna-
Can I look at yours? Is the housing committee?
Yeah,
I'll read
one.
that one,
Yes, you know, you can actually borrow.
There's a- one right
yeah.
there.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I still have the Starlink for you.
All right, I want to try at some point. I've been so busy, I haven't had any time to do anything. All right. Bring this Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Vinalhaven for Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 to order. Roll call. Eric Gasparini, myself, Pam Alley, and Leslie Dyer is attending online. Absent is Jake Thompson. Andy Tor, town manager, and Elizabeth Bunker taking minutes, deputy town clerk. All right. Number 2, minutes. Approve the minutes from January 19th,
So moved.
2022.
Second.
So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Leslie vote yes, I couldn't see.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all right. Number 3, approve and sign treasurer's warrant number
So
31.
moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Yes.
Number 4, do we have any additions, subtractions to the end of? All right,
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
seconded. All those in favor?
Yes.
You are.
Agenda,
Yes.
7D.
Number 5, communications.
None.
Seeing none. 3, 2, 1, moving on.
D.
D is in.
D?
Number
you not on?
6, speakers from the floor.
Oh, I've got the wrong agenda.
Pam and Ellen are looking at.
I'm
old
sorry.
agendas.
I'm looking at the wrong thing.
So the agenda's on the screen. It's on the screen here. Right,
I have too many papers.
It's not on here.
that's the wrong agenda.
All right. No speakers from the floor. We'll move on to 7, committee and department reports appointments. We will go to 7D, housing committee.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I don't remember
This
approving
is
that.
just a little brief report where the housing committee is going to give you a more complete one after our next meeting, which is February 7th. We've been doing a lot of research, and I just want you to know the planning commission met. We made a lot of headway into changing the ordinance to promote year-round rental housing. We've got a lot of really good, very succinct ideas. I don't know if you want me to tell you about them, but it was mostly, we've been working mostly with only with the water and sewer area of the town, where we have town water and sewer, to change the setbacks, the lot sizes and all of that, to just kind of grandfather whatever is there and go from there. And Jeff is checking with fire marshal about fire code requirements, and Wes is going to check with Colin Clark to make sure that if we're making changes in the shoreline zone, that those are okay. You know, changing some of those restrictions, the limits and setbacks and things like that. We'll have I have all the details here, but I don't know if you want them today. And we've been doing a lot of research on the fuel efficiency and weatherization. Been in touch with Keith
Oh, good.
McPherson. In fact, I have a meeting with him tonight at 7:30, because he really knows all those programs and how people qualify,
Right.
and trying to get a hold of Suzanne McPherson from the Island Institute. Andy worked with her years ago. She was very involved with that program with Keith. Have not been able to speak to her in spite of Andy's best efforts. So I don't know what's going on with that, but we're going to keep trying to figure out, and we have ads running, which you may have seen in the wind. And I'm hoping on Facebook, I'm hoping Andy and Matt's put it on Facebook for us, asking people if we can find a way to do these weatherization and fuel efficiency audits. Are you interested? Because we don't want to get things all set up if nobody's interested. But apparently a lot of people, maybe 17 people, 2 years in a row, different people have taken advantage of the LIHEAP program, the low income home energy efficiency. LIHEAP, what does that stand for? Anyway, so those people automatically qualify for energy audits and home repairs because they're lower income. So we're looking into all of that, and if people are interested, we may get some applications and just have them around town so people can fill them out. And Marjorie Stratton said she'd help people fill out applications if people needed help. And we're looking, the other thing that you gave us authorization to do is look at town-owned land and see which parcels might be large enough and appropriate for possible development. So one of the other things we want to do is get Jason Bird from Penquist, who's offered to help us, any way he can, and others like him who are low-income, affordable housing developers come out and just drive around and look at a few parcels. And I wanted to know if there are specific places that you all think might be particularly appropriate.
Sit and think about 'em.
Well, if you think of some, or think of some places, let me know. And we have to think about who to invite out here to just sort of look around and just see what they think.
Do we have a lot of town land within the water and sewer district?
No, some of it, like the net factories in town in that
Right.
district, but like Booth's Quarry and there's land, a lot of land out at State Beach. But there are also a couple of big privately owned parcels in the town area, and it might be worth thinking about whether or not those might be donated or acquired for a reduced rate. So I just wanted to let you know that we're alive, we're active, we're thinking about all these things, got a really good committee. Oh, sadly, Barbara Philbrook felt that for personal reasons, she might have to withdraw from the committee for a while. So we will have an opening. So if there's someone who might have an interest in being on the housing committee, who's, active and eager like the rest of the committee members, that would be great. So we're very sorry to lose her. A couple of people are going to try to convince her otherwise.
So until we hear from her,
That's true. She has to.
Well, she hasn't formally withdrawn, so she'll remain on the committee until otherwise. but-
Okay, good. Well, she's getting all the emails and stuff.
yeah,
Okay,
Okay, that's a really just quick synopsis. I just felt like I hadn't seen you all for a while, and it would be good to let you know that we're alive and active.
you can always email us information.
Can we?
Yes,
Directly?
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
you can,
Great, yeah, because we have a lot of information on the weatherization and repairs, and it's lengthy. We've got to make it more succinct for you and make a real, focus. That's what we're going to do at our next meeting.
yeah,
okay.
The planning commission's meeting next on Thursday, so we'll be working on the ordinance again too. Speaking of which, how are we doing on getting a planner?
Working on it.
Do you think there'll be anything that the housing committee is going to ask for that would have to be updated in the budget for this coming budget?
Very interesting question.
Because the budget season's starting, so if you think you're gonna need funds in the next fiscal year, you wanna have an estimate of that now and submit it for this coming budget season, so that we can have it on the annual town meeting and then get it approved.
I guess it depends on what you would authorize us to do. Yeah, apparently Keith told me, and I'll know more about this after our meeting tonight, the Allen Institute helped pay for some of the housing audits and weatherizations and transportation. And Pam very kindly put him up. So if there are extra costs to have him come out, if people need the program, that might be something. I don't know, in terms of the planning commission and the housing committee, both wanting to work on the ordinance revisions to allow and create more opportunity for housing. Maybe part of the planning assistance could be in our budget. I don't know. I don't know how you divide these things up. Andy, how close are we to getting a planner?
I was hopeful to have the numbers from a second consultant for tonight's meeting, but did not get them, so.
But have you been in touch with Noel Muddins?
I've been in touch with two planning consultants, and I was waiting for the second
Okay, because
proposal to come in, so the board has something to compare. I only have one set of numbers so far.
I
Yeah.
should mention that I did contact the Main State Planning Office, hoping to get some help with planning, thinking maybe they could give us free help. And the fellow who called me back said there used to be 20 people in our office. I'm the only one here now. And I read comprehensive plans, and most of them are done by volunteers, but there are two planners who work with towns and they do very good work. And one is Noel Munson. Oh, interesting, because he's worked on the harbor management ordinance or management plan. So I'm hoping he's in the running because it sounds like he already has familiarity with the community. And at one point he had said that he had time and he would be able to help us because Andy had given me permission to reach out to him initially.
Well, if we get another estimate from someone else, obviously that would be better compared to the two, but all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay. We'll now go back to 7A, appointment to Main State Ferry Service Advisory Board.
When will that term end?
Doesn't say.
I move we appoint Alan Barker to the Main State Ferry Service Advisory Board for a
second,
term ending
It might be annual, so I'm not just
Oh.
saying through this June.
Until the end of June.
I'll just say until well, if you don't know, till the end of the term.
All right, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Yes.
Okay,
Just a quick note, that there's a typo there.
Yep.
Alan Baker.
Yeah. Mhm.
7B, downtown project update, updated project timeline.
Just giving an update, the engineers reviewed largely to fall into compliance with the EDA requirements in the timeline in an effort to avoid any water work and disruptions to businesses and businesses largely for water work that was needed to be done. They didn't want to try and make that happen in the summer, so we're going to wait till the fall to start the water work. And so we kind of just updated that based on that adjustment to the schedule. They haven't adjusted the final completion at this point yet. I still believe they can get everything completed in that initial time frame with the current scope of work. So just giving you this update as it came in a couple weeks ago.
We needed-
So,
oops,
sorry, I was pretty much everything on here is just planning work. There's not going to be any actual construction done this spring, summer, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. There'll be a lot of probably mobilization, and
Okay,
we can't put anything out to bid until everything, like you see the submission, the goal is to get everything submitted to EDA by May 13th.
okay,
And that hopefully within 2 months, they can turn that around, and then they'll be able to advertise the project before June's over, and then potentially award bids in August.
and then construction start up in September. Okay, all right.
The NBRC will still need to finalize and secure the match for that $1 million grant. Some of that will address during probably next year's budget. Well, probably actually sooner than that. I can't wait till June because that portion of that funder is going to help cover the cost of a lot of the engineering work and the dock and working waterfront infrastructure work. So Woodin & Curran is working on a SHIP grant application. I believe unless they've increased it, it was up to $250,000 grants. That still holds. So between that and then the consideration of current reserve funds that we have, like the harbor reserve and any remaining funds that weren't committed to EDA that might be in the sidewalk and road reserve funds can be considered at a board meeting. So
We have to get a match up to $1 million or half of the million to match.
$1 million.
We
So
have to
they
get $1
awarded
million.
us $1 million and we need to match that
So it'll be 2 million for the project, half of it's in the grant. Okay.
or
right,
scale the project back.
Right, okay,
We still haven't heard anything concrete about a timeline or expectation that Congress might consider the congressional funding measures that have been put forward. We still have those 2 applications submitted. We called and checked in with Senator King's staff, and they haven't heard any updates on that yet.
so when do we have to have the matching funds,
They have up to a year to secure those funds.
and how long will the SHIP application take?
Don't think that's terribly long.
We should
I
have
think
an
it's
answer
turnaround.
by-
I think it's rolling applications, and so it shouldn't be terribly long. I don't believe to
So we
hear
did
back
it
once we get it in
We'd have an answer on that sometime this year.
this spring, presumably.
Okay, all right, great.
I think, if we can have this secured, this part of the paperwork secured by, middle or end of spring at the latest, I'm assuming this is what we'd be aiming for.
Okay. But we won't be able to. We're gonna look to increase the reserves just in case.
It probably wouldn't hurt. I need to sit down and we're meeting next week to kind of go through a little finer detail with the funding that's left. And we presented at a previous board meeting, but to look at the grants that we're planning to apply for.
Yeah.
And, some assumptions on what we may or may not get and some like a plan A, plan B kind of thing that's for the board to consider.
So how many more are we applying for that we haven't received an answer on?
That we're going to apply for. I don't know how many more we might apply for. I
Have
know the
applied
SHIP
for
grant.
or in,
There's only
like we
2
know
that,
we're
there's
applying
2 that
for.
we've submitted. We don't know. There's 2 congressional
okay.
projects, one with Representative Kingery, one with Senator King.
And then the SHIP grant is the other one that
And the ship grant, we need to do a submit still.
Is the Pingree one, the million plus that she
Both
put forward for us?
congressional
Okay,
projects,
all right. Okay,
And both of those were put in with, for the most part, with water and sewer projects in mind.
yeah,
Um,
which
and I
is
think that
good.
can cover drainage, and there might be some ability to cover some resiliency work related to flooding. It's kind of narrow, but it's possible. Drainage is big within that clean water and drinking water programs. So that would make things a lot more comfortable in terms of what we need to continue to put up.
Yeah,
So if we can hear any movement on that.
I mean, in the grand scheme of those bills, what we're potentially could get is peanuts, so you think they would be able to quickly answer on those,
Right.
but, okay,
Now, there's definitely a lot. So I think each representative brought, I think, 10 projects initially, and then it was pared down from there. So there's a lot. I saw the list at one point. There's a lot of them to think of how many representatives.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Any other questions on 7B? 7C, library.
David just joined. She's working with Scott on the strategic planning process for the library. Memo for the board seeking one or more of the board's participation in the questionnaire and survey work.
Unfortunately, I cannot commit 2 hours this week to that.
No, I'm gonna have another meeting sometime this week for another organization. I don't have the time this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, if it was next week, I could, but I can't do it this week, unfortunately.
Is there a meeting Thursday morning, a Zoom? For the downtown project?
Yes,
That's at 10.
I believe so.
I can. Yeah, I can donate some time.
Gabe, when were you planning on having the meeting?
It's really up to, whomever, it's a one-on-one conversation. So it's really, it would be scheduled at a time that would work for you. I mean, we're ideally this week, if it needs to go into next week, that's fine too, if that's better. We're trying to do as many of them as we can this week, but, and we'll schedule it to, really whatever works for whoever wants to have the conversation.
Okay, I will be available Thursday afternoon.
Great. Okay. And Pam, you said you would also be available?
If you need me, yes, I'll be at that Zoom meeting Thursday morning, right?
Yep.
10 o'clock.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'm subbing at school again, so. But
Okay.
yeah, if you need me, just let me know.
Okay. All right. I will follow up with both of you via email.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Move on to 8, old business. 8A, main community action grant draft resolution.
I did start to fill in our town in the draft resolution. There are a handful of actions that they're recommending, or preamble statements that we kind of have to select. We also need to go through the checklist, or someone representing the town has to go through the checklist. And I don't remember if the board kind of fell on, if that's something the board wants to do, if the board wants me to try and go through and just present to you, or if the Civil Rights Committee is something you want them to try and tackle. Again, this is all to be able to show the state that we're committed to taking action, but now they're providing some funds for action grants. And the potential to get up to $50,000 towards one of the many items on their checklist, or something that's related to.
Is this something that the sea level rise committee has the bandwidth to do. I'd rather not. put
Um,
on-
Yeah, I was under the understanding that that I would be going through the checklist and this, and then Andy, I would be running that by you and then also the sea level rise committee. That was what I thought the plan was. But I think that's what we proposed initially.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Gabe.
I think it's over my head.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's
No
something
pun
that we
intended.
are able to accomplish presumably by the next board meeting, because now then we'll be into March and with very little time to turn around. the
Yep.
grant. So I just want to make sure that, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
Is that something that we can have ready for next, what, the 8th, what's today, the 1st, the 15th? Is that enough time? Or you need sooner than
Sure.
that? All right. I mean, will you need a motion from us to move forward with anything? Like,
Not yet. The board will have to adopt the resolution, so if you want to just review that between now and the next meeting, the sample resolution that's there. Again, some of this will be, the preamble statements will be informed by the checklist, but
okay.
at least read through those, to kind of get an idea. We can present a more final draft version of the resolution.
All right. Yeah, I
I
don't
mean, I
want.
do think it would, we had talked about this last time of the projects that were sort of that Andy had highlighted in green, looking through and either Andy recommending one or more of those for you to consider, or sort of narrowing down the green scope. But since we are applying the grant is due the 22nd of March. So there's a little time to write the proposal. It's not a heavy lift or anything, but it'd just be good to know what we were writing for. And so I think choosing that priority, and again, one that best matches something that we have a bunch of background work done on it. So, a planning effort, something that was recommended in the downtown master plan, something that was recommended in the flood resilience checklist, preferably a recommendation that came from a study or what am I trying to say? a study or report or activity that had a somewhat extensive community engagement process, because that's a component of this. So it couldn't have just been like something we hired out and didn't have any community consultation around.
A
But
lot of the, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you.
no,
finished.
I'm done. Go ahead, Pam.
I was just curious if any of the information would be able to be found in, when we had that meeting a few years ago, that the community, we were all involved.
Was
I
that
don't
the
know.
flood resilience checklist? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many of the sea level rise, like their work now is based on that. The community rating system was in that. There's a whole bunch of things that are in this 72 list of actions. And even things that Andy did highlight in green that were recommendations that came out of that. So it's not like some far-fetched thing. It's definitely like they're in there. So I just think like matching what you all think are the priorities, and then we'll go back and look at, well, where did these fall in those? Was it in the flood resilience checklist report? Was it in the downtown master plan or another report? The chances are yes. We just want to make sure that we can trace it back to a community process.
All right.
That pair down list with the highlighted green, that was in the last packet, correct? I'll go back and check that. I mean, it's 50,000. It's not gonna go far, but we'll take it if we can get it. So.
Exactly.
All right. So we'll go over the resilience partnership resolution, and we'll expect the checklist to be completed for the next meeting, and then we'll have some recommendations on what to apply for, essentially, what we put the funds toward. And that should be that, right? All right, good. Okay. 9A, new business, surplus equipment, 2014 Ford Explorer.
You may or may not remember the white Ford Explorer that we purchased a while back. The county in the last contract that we had agreed to terms on had taken on the responsibility of providing the cruiser. The white Ford was taken off island to come back with the new one, essentially. And it sat in a parking lot, I think, for the last year and a half or so. So the county, the sheriff has asked if the town, we still have a title on it, the town would be willing to consider signing the title over to the county for the use, tentatively thought to be used by the EMA office. There's something a little more efficient to drive around in than a big pickup. Don't think when it left here that it was really very serviceable. I think the county had kind of identified that as something that needed to be replaced anyways. And we still had it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there any way we get some money for it, but it's probably gonna cost them more to fix it up anyway, so I don't have a problem donating it to the Knox Emergency Management Agency, if that is okay with the rest of the board.
I may.
Yes.
Okay. I make a motion, we donate the 2014 Ford Explorer to the Knox Emergency Management Agency.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
All right. Nine B, wage floor adjustments.
Something I started a conversation with you more so about last meeting, and something that I think we've casually been talking about, the challenge of trying to fill positions and keep current employees. So I'd kind of gone through a few different scenarios in terms of what should we be doing, and again, this is a lot to acknowledge that we aren't really getting applications for the current openings. And some of that has to do with the wage amount that we're offering. And when I looked at and what I presented last time was kind of an average of other jobs that are open today or between Christmas and the last meeting, that like we're just on something simple like Indeed, and looking at there's a range of private, nonprofit, and government jobs on that list that we had. And the average starting pay for those jobs at that point was $17.40 in the mid-coast. So trying to figure out how do we get that starting wage for some of those entry-level positions in some of our departments to get closer to that number. And ended up, after looking at all those different scenarios that I have in the memo there, fell on a proposal for $2.50 an hour increase. Concurrent, that'd be across the board for all employees today, and the positions or the positions that we have open, we can then raise the starting pay on those. I don't know if that in of itself is still enough to attract the current ones, but I think it's something that the board and the town has to acknowledge in terms of keeping current workers still here, and having a better chance of attracting the people to the open positions. I think there'll be more discussion within the budget process about other benefits and other ways to try and make the town an attractive hire or employer that we can consider. At this point,
This is just a starting point.
but for right now, 'cause we have positions open right now, try and consider something like this to hopefully attract some applications.
This is for all hourly employees, correct? Or are we gonna be applying it across the board?
I mean, pretty much everyone is hourly. There's only 2 salaries.
Right, okay. How do we, because it's gonna apply to everyone, right? I know it's the starting salaries, but people who are already here, you can't not give them a bump as well.
They'll
the
get-
proposal.
they'll-
And
they'll
that's-
get it.
Yeah, okay, okay.
And that's the challenge I have, for a couple of positions, if we place with a higher wage closer to the average that we're seeing in mid-coast right now. And again, as Jake pointed out, this doesn't account for the average Midcoast is seeing account for the island factor, if you will, where everything's a little bit more.
Right.
You know, but it does get us a little bit closer to that. We have to catch up. And
Right.
this is gonna be the new floor that we're seeing in the area. We have to catch up to it yet. And didn't seem, in my mind, I didn't know how I could offer more on the starting wage for an entry-level position without recommending that we adjust the current workers, because they'll be training them, they'll be working alongside of them, and they've got years of experience.
Right.
Right.
No,
So,
I'm not suggesting that we don't increase current employees as well as the entry level. Obviously, we have to do that. I'm just clarifying. So, okay.
I don't think this is gonna be the big fight. I think the big fight will be, benefit increase. I think that's where you're gonna see it. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but,
right. But I did try to break down, just so you can see what the, if approved, at $2.50 an hour, what the current, based on current positions, what the budget impact would be for each department for this year, from February through June, and then what the budget impact of that $2.50 would be for all of next fiscal year. So this fiscal year, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about us being able to carry or cover these costs just through our operating budget. We do have a few departments just without positions filled. I noted that we budget for travel, for training, not largely for training, and most all of the training has been remote. So, there's money within those lines and other areas that we can consciously choose to make this investment if this is something the board's willing to consider. And then next year, of course, we'll have to acknowledge that there'll be right out of the gate the change in the wages to account for the change that might happen now.
This is just in wages. This is not addressing the benefits. side of
and
it.
presumably a cost of living raise as well. Every year we've been giving 2%. So
Right.
you'll increase wages now by $2.50, and then in
They'll
6
be-
months,
they'll still
increase
be-
another 2% just based
Right.
on the yearly.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably,
And that's, I wanted to kind of, in my mind, I wanted to separate the two issues. In my mind, they are kind of two issues, the wage floor that's been
Yeah.
dramatically changed this year, in the
Yeah.
last 2 years. And us falling behind it. And then, yes, I wanted to be able to deal with the budget process, the other pieces of
piece.
that.
Right.
All right, do we
That makes sense.
do we need to make a motion now to put this in place, or?
There'll need to be a motion to put it in place. I'm hopeful that if it can be today, great. If you need more time to think about it, that's up to the board.
No.
Just it's a matter of, if it were to happen, I'd be able to post, things sooner rather than later in terms of the
Right.
job openings that we have.
Would a motion of, I move that we increase all wages by $2.50 an hour for effective immediately? Is that potentially what you, does that cover all bases? Yeah, for the time being?
Okay, I have a second. All those in favor?
Yes.
I said tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for. That'll go a long way for.
Thank you for putting in
Yeah,
the
thanks.
time to
Andy,
get
for
this
all
to
your
us,
work.
'cause we know, we have to at least be at the minimum of what
Yeah.
the rest of the counties are offering, so. All right. So, number 10, report of town manager.
Didn't write one. There's a short, it was kind of a hectic week for me. I ended up going to New York for a few days to do some family stuff.
Is everything okay with the family?
Generally.
Okay.
So just was working as much as I could from afar. I was unfortunate that it coincided with a blizzard, but was doing the best I could to
I
stay
mean,
in
good
touch.
for you that you got out of the boat.
Well, I would have preferred to have been helping, but it is what it is. So did do my best to keep in contact at least. I know there were a few challenges with cleanup in the storm, so we're dealing with that. There were a couple insurance claims that'll be coming out of it, but we're moving. So look to resolve those. And other than that, in the public works, there were some breakdowns, but to be expected. And as far as I know right now, things are together and running. It's just things to deal with during storms as we do every winter.
Wait, what were the insurance claims?
So,
There was damage to a building on Main Street.
Oh,
A window had been broken
okay.
and a vehicle had been hit
Um,
during plowing on one of the smaller side roads.
Okay. All right.
which is gonna bring up, well, we'll talk about that. Maybe that might be a broader discussion just about addressing if people are going to park on the side of a road during a storm,
Yeah,
you know, perhaps,
you can't do that.
you know, our drivers are skilled, but it's sometimes we'll have to ask for if it's
Right.
blinding visibility and a narrow road anyway.
Yeah, the current parking ordinance does allow for the town manager to issue an emergency parking ban.
Okay.
Didn't
Is that apply
cross my
anywhere?
mind.
Can you do it island wide?
Yep, okay, as far as I know, it didn't say you can. I
Okay.
mean, there's a parking ordinance that a lot of it focuses on the downtown area, and what sides of the road or what roads you can't park on. But, you know, the section that addresses that just says, you know, general. Is how I read it. So, and it's for things like this, you know, we're not, you know, other places do it. You gotta clean up.
Yeah.
Generally, I think it was pretty good. I think the reports I was hearing from folks, you know, Public Works and the fire department was that there weren't many people out, which was great.
Yep.
Well, sometimes during storms there are. So it didn't cross my mind to think that we needed to issue it. Now, even if you do issue it and someone does still park on the side of the road, you know, it may change the insurance liability a bit. It might not be on us 100%, but it might, you know, we might, depending on the situation, they're all a little bit different. But it is something that, you know, you need to keep in mind next time.
So it was a vehicle in the downtown area? No, it was out of town.
It
Yeah,
was parked.
on York Road.
It was?
Mm.
Um,
Oh, God. Oh, all right.
Cool.
Yeah, okay.
No.
I didn't hear anything from my dad, so, okay, all right, fair enough.
Other than that, do you have a couple applications already for the Public Works Director's position? Planning to do a couple interviews later this week. See how that goes. And other than that, I mean, the office is closed in the afternoons for the next 2 weeks. Marjorie's actually come in to help some of the clerk stuff for us. But it'll give us the opportunity in the afternoon. What's a lot of Darlene's out, Darlene and Martha are out for a couple weeks. So this will give us, by closing the afternoons, it gives us the opportunity because we have to get the financial audit stuff done and prepped. And that's all due by the first week of March or second week of March. So this will give us a chance for the next 2 weeks to really try and prep and work on getting that finished as well as the workers' comp audit. So with those things up against, and Debbie's the one that generally has a big lift on both of those. And Marge will be helping us with the audit prep. Her background is in auditing, CPA. That'll be really helpful to try and help get us prepared with the new auditor to try and make that a smooth transition as possible to the new firm. So those things has kind of been the primary focus lately.
Mm.
What does it sound like for Friday? It's not gonna be like last Saturday, right? But
Not yet.
A few inches of snow. It put potential for another bigger storm maybe Monday, but that's a long ways away.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be, more interested in tracking the rain event, you know, if we're supposed to get rain Thursday potentially, and
Right.
making sure that we've got drains open.
Mm.
Because it sounds like it's gonna go from rain to
Just
some sort of mix to
Right.
snow. We are eventually it's going to snow on Friday.
Right.
Yeah. slippery.
Be
Sounds like a
a
mess.
mess, yeah, that's what it sounds like. Okay,
So how is the salt shed doing, keeping everything, is that working a lot better for?
Yeah, there was some material that we had, when it came out, and as quick as it was, we had to store in the open area and then mix it as the salt came in. We mixed as much as we could in the building.
Right,
Eventually, we started to get too far into it, and started having to putting the equipment in there at the same time and mix it. So they had this, so some of that had been a little wetter because it had rained, of course, in November and December, because we were prepping that. But generally a big difference
Oh,
in
good.
the material. It allows us to get a more finer sand. And so it's, they've noticed a big difference. We haven't had to shovel any trucks out at this point, which is great. Usually by now we've had to, a storm like we just had, we probably would have had to shovel the trucks out, because it would have frozen in there.
mm-hmm,
I noticed going by some freshly laid sand that it looked like very fine, like
More
like a
even
Caribbean
coverage.
Well,
sand.
what it
than
was
a-
supposed to be like.
Not
Yeah.
the clumps,
Yeah, right, not mud.
right?
Yeah, it's very clean. I mean, we even took the grizzly bars off some of the trucks because, you know, with the stuff we've ordered in the past, it had to be a little coarser because it was stored outside and we were getting so much rain the last few years in the wintertime. And Eric was down there a couple of years ago trying to get sand in a tote and he said you were shoveling muck.
Yeah.
And it was just
Mhm.
mud. But with that, it was more of a bank run and not as fine. So there was a lot of other things. Nick was mentioning that he had pieces of lumber in there, bigger rocks. And so, you know, we were able to take the grizzly bars off some of the trucks even because it's
Whatever a
great.
grizzly bar may be.
Well, it basically, you know, is a screen that if you
Oh, I
put the
see.
material on there, it stops the wood and the larger rocks from
Right.
falling into it because they won't be able to feed through the chute. So
No.
major difference from previous stuff and it has seemed to help them out a lot.
Good. So it's worth our time and effort to do that.
Oh, yeah,
That's great.
it was a hard fought battle, but
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, we've had employee injuries shoveling out the trucks before and you can avoid those and not have them focused dealing with that because it freezes in there all the better.
Yeah. All right. Board of members,
so I'll start. So I don't want this topic of discussion to, because of what happened on Main Street during storm cleanup, because I was gonna bring this up anyway. But I brought up in years past, and it hasn't really gone anywhere, but I really think it's time that we address the idea of storefront or store owners taking care of their section of sidewalk during winter storms. I understand there will be some logistics to work out, and there'll probably be some pushback from those store owners, at least some of them. But I think it's time that we do that. Everywhere else that I know of, you know, they're responsible for their section of building or whatever they own for sidewalks.
it's not just store owners too, it's residential or business.
Right now, I'm talking, let's start with Main Street.
Yeah.
That's where we focus most of our attention. And I'm not saying that eventually maybe we do stop wherever we have a sidewalk, but
Right.
for right now, you know, let's start with, I'm thinking bank to light company.
That
Yeah.
sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
You know,
agree.
That's a starting point at least.
And in your mind, is that to allow, I just need help understand, is that to allow us the opportunity to get to the other sidewalks?
Mhm.
Or just to focus attention on roadways? We have other sidewalks that we do try to get to. And just be able to understand,
With that too, keeping other, if we could, if for the time being, if we're only gonna have an ordinance for Main Street, yeah, it could be for keeping other sidewalks clear, at least after the storm. And, you know, taking care of the roads, yeah.
Right, roads and then.
You know, I mean-
It would be prioritized by what you need, what they would need to do first,
You know, could
right?
be, you know, I know, you know, on Saturday, the last business open was the Sandbar at 4 o'clock. The grocery store closed by noon. Friend, I think, closed at noon as well. Not that they're on Main Street, but you know, and I took a ride through Main Street a couple times. I was one of the brave souls out looking around, but you know, there's obviously, you know, there's not much foot traffic on the sidewalks. You don't need to have the town crew focusing that much on those sidewalks when those business owners can do it. I think they're, you know, and there's, you know, I understand we have some businesses that are only open a few months out of the year, and the owners might not even be on island this time of year, but they can, I'm sure they can find somebody, you know, hire somebody to take care of their section.
Right,
You know, and like I said, I know it's be a logistical mess, and it's not gonna be for this winter. You know, it's gonna take time to make sure we do this fairly and equitably, but, you know, because it's gonna take time, we should probably start sooner rather than later. That's all I have. Yeah, now I'll wait for my hate mail.
well, I think you're right though, Eric, you know, there's no reason why people, you know, shouldn't be able to help out to some degree in some of their own places, so.
Right.
And if it's too big, of course, they're not gonna be expected to go out and move a 16-foot snowbank, the way sometimes it blows in, but
Like right in front of Allison's, it gets really.
Yeah.
Like right, it funnels.
yeah.
mean, I think our biggest challenge really is trying to prioritize the roads, during the business hours, with pressure to keep the sidewalks open as people are in general, normal, just regular snow events, not a blizzard, but, trying to keep answer to the public about the sidewalks being open and clean and clear during business hours. And that's not something we're able to do this year. Haven't been able to do well this year. And the roads, in my mind, are the priority, with the crew size we have right now. And we had enough people to come in and shovel them, we could do both. But if we don't, then I've told them to prioritize the roads open
Right.
and treated. And then really during the cleanup, I mean, after something like this or any event, is just the ability to get in there without traffic and interference. That's kind of what slows it down. It makes it a lot easier if there aren't cars parked along the road and you clean it up. And as people drive through, I mean, it slows them down. I mean, just saying those are our biggest challenges usually in trying to respond, is keeping up while they're open and then cleaning it up actually. So the logistical challenge of, okay, if we require store owners or property owners to do it themselves, it's by what time should it be done so that we can clean up? We're still going to be expected to clean from the curb out. It's all good things to think about if that's something that you want to pursue.
And it might involve, we might have to ask other towns how they do it, because obviously, Allison was in here a year or so ago. She asked why we didn't have such an ordinance.
I think I heard somebody said that she and Aaron were shoveling down in front of
I
the.
guess I'll pictures of it.
And I've seen Harbor Market employees before, doing some, it was, I'm not saying that you see that every time, but I've seen them. And at the very least, the walk, whatever you want to call it, their entranceway, their walkway area, which are some I've seen our town crew, taking care of that, because if you're right there shoveling the sidewalk, you might as well go up 5 feet or whatever.
Where would we ask them to shovel snow? Because I know when I lived in the city, they're like, you can't shovel it into the street. So
So shovel it to the curb, and the parking lots essentially aren't parking lots at that point.
Right.
And at least we do, I mean, along the north side of Main Street, we have parking spaces. And at least you can get it to that. That's what we try to do, is get it all to the parking spaces, and then here we're able to come through and kind of
Yeah.
consolidate it into a bigger pile and then truck it into the parking lot.
right.
And really, if store owners are cleaning up, and if they are throwing it into some of it into the parking spot, because it's not like it's going to completely eliminate parking there. People
No.
can still, it's not the same as it's snowing. People, it's now very loose snow. People can drive in and out of there.
Right.
I do think it's certainly an opportune time with the Main Street project ahead of us to make sure that as much as possible sidewalks are designed at a minimum to meet ADA compliance, but also to accommodate some of our equipment to help clear the Main Street, if possible. And that same would go for other sidewalks. I mean, High Street's on our radar to try and do something with. That's not something that we can, I think oftentimes they either put a plow blade down in some spots because the sidewalk's level with the road, or use the backhoe. They were doing that today. It's too narrow in some places to fit even a small tractor we have.
Right.
The telephone poles, the curbs, the drainage. So I think, as we think about sidewalk improvements, is to make sure we're taking that in mind in terms of whether it's property owners doing it or us. That's again part of our challenge. It's not something that's easy to get into any piece of equipment. We have to just move along.
Right.
I know in some places they'll do a pass, but they aren't doing doorways. They aren't getting everything. The city will do what they can with a pass of whatever equipment they have and leave the rest.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, sidewalks don't need to be during a storm, don't need to be much wider than the fathom. Yeah, it's not perfect, but you're out in a storm. If you don't like the snow, there are plenty of places far to the south that doesn't do this sort of thing. But
I just had a question that came up when we were going over the surplus equipment. Our contract with Knox County, that ended in December, correct? It did. So we are not under contract at the moment.
Currently, we are not under a contract. Both parties are honoring the previous one, as we are still with PIA, for example, at the
Yeah.
district. So that's something the sheriff did reach out to last week. He brought up the cruiser and brought up the contract.
Okay.
They aren't envisioning any major changes to the contract. I don't think any changes actually, if I remember right.
Other than probably like cost of living increases in the wages.
Yeah, I did ask for an updated kind of wage schedule, so I knew it reflected that we have some current. And we are still, at this point, budgeting, did budget for 2 deputies, one at 100%, one at 50%. So budget-wise, we've got it covered this year because I haven't been able to fill the second position. But yes, for next year, just an updated wage sheet. But the conditions that were in the previous one about the rent, the housing, the cost breakdown, the cruiser responsibility on them, splitting the transportation cost 50/50.
The phone was still on, like the cell phone was on them, was that us?
That's on them.
That's on them, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it didn't mix that. We canceled the plan when at some point there.
Yeah.
We didn't have our resident deputy filled, so.
Right. So we should be expecting a new contract from them soon.
Mhm.
All right. I assume that we were just honoring it as, because they've been coming out here, so, okay.
Yeah, they didn't have any intention to not provide that service to us. I assume the board's community is still interested in having that provided to us.
As far as I know.
Absolutely, whatever. Yeah. Gotta keep that going.
It would be great to, if the community still wants to, perhaps something between now and throughout the budget process to kind of check in with community and people, and make sure that and the community, is interested in trying to fill 2 positions. Because that is a pretty substantial budget amount. Have that second one.
And I think we haven't even had it yet. So until we have it and then can evaluate if it's actually working the way we hope, we have to try to get it first. 'Cause I know right now there's not as much activity. It seems like it's quieted down, but we get into spring and summer, it's just gonna ramp back up again. There'll be more people around and all that, so we're gonna need it. Maybe it turns out if we finally get a second, we have a seasonal, it's 1 during the winter and then 2 spring through November or something like that, or October, I don't know. But we haven't even got a second one yet, so.
Yeah,
That's a good thought, though.
a few years ago, we did increase it so that at least during the peak seasons for us, I think it was like a 12-week period that we budgeted for additional like 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it was filled by daytime coverage that, they'd come out and fill a 10-hour shift that way. So that was coverage during the daytime on those off days at least. So we had done that, but I know it didn't meet all the expectations that we had at that time.
Right. I mean, nobody was murdered last year, so that's a step up. But, oh,
God.
it's a step in the right direction. You never know. My only other question, anything on broadband yet? Have you been able to reach out to them yet? Or?
I did, both companies Consolidated responded very quickly. They have a new contact person from who we had talked to before. And they did give me a refresh on kind of like a report they had in terms of service available to what number of localities on the island, like this many households have access to this many to this level, and then a subscription rate to those levels. So I was curious, because we had that before. I was curious to know in the last year and a half how that may have changed. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I have a follow up with Consolidated to talk more. I know initially they did, and I asked them, they have no plans on their own accord to expand or improve service levels in the next 5 years. I think it was
That's
5.
different than what I
It
was
was 3 or
told.
5 years. I can't remember what number I asked. But they're certainly willing to have a conversation if the community is interested in partnering with them on a solution. And I haven't heard back from Spectrum or
But you have reached out and you're just waiting on them. Okay. All right.
Well, what did they tell you?
Oh, the next 2 years,
Oh,
which was last year.
Yeah.
So should be
next year
this
then.
year. No.
Oh, yeah, this year, right.
Next year, I guess. But yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath on that one. That's all I had.
And also, just to remind you, Andy, about the chance of using the auditorium before a town meeting, before graduation is, we can, if we want to have the date earlier, we have to put in a building use form. If we want to go for the 1st of June.
I don't know if we want to go that early. do we?
I mean,
'Cause we
it's, I just throwing that out there.
Because we have to build backwards from that. And
Right.
we're already,
You know, if
haven't
you
even-
still want to wait till
we
the
haven't
end of June.
we haven't even started till to do our budget process yet.
Yeah, my plan was to get the books out after completing this weekend.
Okay. Yeah, I would think the 1st of June would be nice, but I think for this year, it's a little ambitious, so we're gonna have to keep it. What did we say, like the 22nd or 1st or something?
I knew that, I
Would
just
you
knew
feel
we
better on
discussed, did we
Thursday,
want to
Sunday?
go that late, or did we want to go earlier? And
I think next year, we should maybe try to go a little bit early, just because if, for whatever reason, that doesn't get voted through, or something doesn't
Right.
get voted through,
Yep.
we have some time to come back and get it in place before the next fiscal year.
And I really love the idea of having to have a quorum or
Yeah.
else. I love that.
That's something that the rest of the board wants to explore and try and put forward.
It might be too quick for this year.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
for
think
this
that-
year, but I mean, is that something you
Yeah.
want to explore to have on the warrant at town meeting this year? So that would apply for next year?
Yeah.
Or
I
any
think-
future meeting?
I think we should,
Let's have some fun.
so by quorum, you mean, how many people have to show?
10, like the certain percentage, you would go.
10% or something?
Yeah, a certain percentage of people who voted in the previous gubernatorial election, for example.
The registered voters.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, and that have
amazing.
to be those people, but just if we have 900 people vote, for example.
You have to have 90.
No,
show
no,
up.
I mean, and 10% might be, but you might say 5%. Try to get,
45. Okay.
which still would be a doubling
Does
of
South
our
Holland do like
typical.
50? They have to have,
They have a certain, I don't know if percentage number.
I
but
thought it was
they
a
have
number. I
some-
thought
they
it was
have
like they had to
something.
have 50 or something.
Is that?
Fox Islands.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And
I
they,
think they picked a number.
they're always able to get it though, right? I mean, they have
Usually.
have
Well,
pretty good
sometimes
they have
raffles.
to
They have pretty
call
good
and
I was gonna say, I've
message.
only been to a couple where they've had to call people and like, hey, you need to come over right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that is a good idea to increase engagement, because we don't get, I feel like we have almost as many people there who can't vote on anything as we do voters.
Yep.
In my mind, it wouldn't, I guess I wouldn't see that addressing, encouraging engagement in the process, but it would certainly perhaps make the community feel a little better about that there aren't just 5 people potentially deciding on the budget, but there's a minimum number that have to attend. I guess I think there's other more effective ways to encourage people to attend than creating an ordinance that has a minimum number.
Well, I'm all
But-
ears for whatever
It's not
those
an
are.
open bar.
Well, I feel like we were starting to head in the right direction when we, pre-COVID, that we had that one
That-
year where we had committees
Yep.
show
Yeah.
what they wanted to and had some dessert stuff there. The second year, we had done a dinner and had a presentation, and that got more people to come, and then COVID happened.
Did a lot of those people who showed up for the dinners, did they actually stay and vote?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Some people might just show up for the dinner and then they,
No, most of them.
I
I think they all did,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay, good,
I don't think anybody left.
good.
I
At
think
least
it was
for the
kind of like, I'm
beginning.
here already and you've had me, so I guess I'll hang on.
Right. Well,
They
it's a great
say we're
opportunity to
part of it.
share what other parts, of the town budget was doing with looking at committee reports or
Yeah.
different stuff.
I would like to see more younger folks who have a future, a much longer future than I do,
Mhm.
showing up and participating. So,
I'd like to see more of the born and raised here.
there you go.
A lot of people that lived here their whole lives and look at me and go, wait, what's going on?
Right.
So
Right.
I probably would recommend if it was something that if we consider a minimum number to meet a quorum for the annual meeting, that we not wait until the second or third week in June, 4th week in June to have that meeting in case there isn't a quorum.
Yeah.
And you need to reschedule a town
That's-
meeting with notice.
And we'd also want to make sure that we could operate on the previous fiscal year's budget
Right,
until
until-
you,
Had a quorum. and
until,
approved
that
the
way
budget.
you have a few months of leeway,
Yeah, so
Well, in that
that's,
case, maybe we should consider just picking a number versus,
As long as,
Percentage.
as long as I'm there, anyone else.
it'll
has to
be,
there.
wouldn't be for this year, though. It'll be at the earliest next fiscal year. Next, so.
it's. that
All right,
sounds
Mr. Chairman, we're going on
A
close to
little
an hour
easier
now.
too.
Thought you said you wanted to get out of here early.
I do. Does anyone have anything else?
No.
Leslie?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Wow.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Look at that.
Look at
50